A lot of what I think has driven Buck's success is that we're a thoughtful and curious and bunch, right? So we will entertain lots of different things. And just because it might be something that doesn't speak to me creatively or financially or whatever, doesn't mean that it's not right for the team or for Buck. And that's, as we've grown, that kind of, I would say, mindset has grown exponentially. So there's lots of minds and lots of considerations that go into what we take and what we don't take. I would say what's changed over the years is we've always been a good blend of business and creative. And I think everyone at Buck, we've always been a very open environment. We've always talked openly about our financials, about budgets. I really never liked the idea that agencies sort of separated those two, because I feel like especially if you're curious and creative and a craftsperson, you're like, tell me where the walls in the sandbox are that I can play, because there's lots that we can do with as long as that information is shared. So I think we've always had a healthy blend, even in our creative leadership, of really thinking about, is this financially viable? Are we going to be able to make something great with this budget? Can we control that? Can we have a seat at the table with the client that's saying, you've asked for this, but given these parameters, timeline, budget, et cetera, what if we did this? I think, that sort of way of working has always been valuable. And so I think what we've seen shift over time is that relationship is probably the thing that, we used to think about, is it a financial opportunity? Is it a creative opportunity? More so, what's the timeline? Those are probably like the three main considerations back in the day. Now it's shifted a bit more to, what's the relationship and what's the ask, and how is this furthering our creative relationships with our, we call them our partners, rather than our clients. Because I think that's more and more the way that we work. It's like they're really trusting us to come in and work closely with them to help figure out what we're sort of the trusted experts in what we can and should deliver, and they're the trusted experts in terms of their brand, and those are like the ideal relationships. And so that's often how we're thinking of it these days.
I like that a lot. At a certain point, you're going to get to a certain success threshold that you're going to always have work coming in. So it's not about chasing the opportunity. It's more about trying to weigh the pros and cons with anything. And at least for me, it's always relationship. Like beyond anything else, I think that the money is always going to be there one way or another. It's more about who do I want to work with, or what relationship do I want to nurture, and just, hey, I love working with this person. We get each other, and that's like priceless. You can't build that otherwise. So it's more about finding those right partnerships. Like, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned over the years running a studio? And I know I'm putting you on the spot with that one, but what have been some of those big ahas that you've really taken with you earlier on, perhaps, and kind of rely on day to day?
I would say the foremost one is the one that I already touched on, which is that this is a people business, and that often I think people focus very much on the end product, which is incredibly important, but that is the result of a bunch of people making it. And so I think really putting the focus on people has been a big business lesson. And I think I've noticed over the past 20 years that that's become more and more at the forefront when you hear executives on TED Talks and, Brené Brown and people talk about vulnerability and things like that. Like, I think that all of those lessons that I think naturally benefited from, just maybe because of the lessons that we had learned in our past jobs where those things weren't the case, have really bared fruit over the years. So I think that's the first one, is just really focusing on people and how you work versus just what you make. Another big lesson for us over the years was to honestly be true to the way that we work. I think that there was a big pivotal moment that happened where we had to look in the mirror, and there's been several for us over the last 20 years, but I would say there was one where we, everyone around us was that used to work in more of a studio model or a collaborative model. Like we're always directing under the name Buck, and we've just always kind of like I was talking about earlier, just sort of built the team around the ask or the project. And at a certain point, a lot of our competitors were starting to build director rosters of named directors. And I think we recognized a lot, like our reps, we had reps at the time that were asking us to potentially do that. They're asking us, we were losing big pitches, even though the creative is really great, because people said, oh, we want that named director. And that was a moment where it was really tempting, and we could have shifted that way because of all those influences. But we just were true to, we were like, this isn't how we work. The way we work is what makes us special. And so we kind of doubled down on that. And honestly, whether that was luck or good timing, that really propelled our growth when we started working directly with more of our client partners, right? Because that's the way they worked, and we could just kind of become extensions of their team, and it allowed us to take on much more complex projects because there wasn't kind of this single point of failure or this single vision, and it allowed us to be much more expansive in the way that we take on work and projects in a way that kind of a studio model can't be. So
that's so great.